Welcome, dear friends, to a magical journey where dreams intertwine with ancient tales. Tonight, we invite you to settle in and let the soothing sounds of a Christmas sleep story whisk you away. As the gentle snow falls outside, we'll explore a beautiful Greek folk tale, rich in tradition and wonder. So, dim the lights, snuggle up, and allow your imagination to wander as we embark on this enchanting adventure together. Sweet dreams await. The first Christmas after my grandmother died, I went back to her village house alone. It sat at the edge of the mountains, at the end of a road that always felt like it was deciding whether to continue or stop. Stone walls, a red-tiled roof, a chimney that leaned a little too far to one side, and a yard where the fig tree held its bare arms up to the winter sky. I hadn't planned to stay there for the holidays, but Athens felt too loud and too bright for grief, and the idea of supermarket tinsel and crowded cafes made my chest hurt. So I packed a small bag, took the bus to the valley, then the second bus up the winding roads to where the air smelled of smoke and snow, and told myself I'd stay. Just a few days. When I pushed open the old wooden gate, the familiar creak almost made me turn around. It sounded like my grandmother scolding the hinge the way she used to, always complaining when someone comes to visit. The house was cold, of course. Houses like that don't stay warm out of habit. I opened the shutters, let the pale December light in, then set about the ritual she taught me every winter of my childhood. First, sweep the hearth. Second, lay the kindling like a small ceremony. Third, light the fire and greet it properly. Χρόνια πολλά, I murmured out of habit as the first flames took, and the words felt strange in the empty room. Many years, as if years were something you could wish for, like sweets or snow. The fire grew, reached up the chimney in a half-forgotten conversation. Shadows leaned out from the corners of the room. I made tea, wrapped my hands around the chipped mug my grandmother always used, white with blue flowers, handle slightly cracked, and sat on the low stool in front of the hearth. That's when I heard it, a soft scuffling somewhere above the fireplace, followed by a faint tap. Tap. I froze. Mice, I thought. Or the wind finding a new way in. Old houses make new sounds when you've been away too long. Then something fell down the chimney with a muffled thud and bounced onto the hearthstone. A walnut. It rolled to my foot and settled there perfectly still. I stared at it. Very funny, I said aloud, though there was no one there to hear me. Another rustle, another small thud. This time, a dried fig, shriveled but intact, landed beside the walnut. My grandmother's voice said in the back of my mind, as clearly as if she were standing behind me. The little troublemakers, they smell the smoke and climb up from below to see who's foolish enough to burn wood this time of year. When I was little, she'd tell stories about them every Christmas, wicked and silly and thin as twigs, with long fingers and eyes too big for their faces. They lived under the earth, she'd said, sawing at the roots of the world tree all year, trying to bring it down, only to forget what they were doing when Christmas came. Then they'd scramble up into the world to steal sausages, tangle hair, knock spoons off tables, and generally make mischief until Epiphany chased them back below. "They're not truly bad," she'd whisper as we watched the fire burn down to embers. "Just bored, and they don't understand the difference between a joke and a cruelty." Another walnut dropped, bounced, then rolled in slow, lazy circles. "Fine," I said to the empty chimney. "I see you." The house settled around me with what might have been relief. The first couple of nights, the visits were small. I'd go to bed and wake to find my socks rearranged, one draped over the back of a chair, another perched on the lamp, a third mysteriously stuffed with dried beans from the pantry. A spoon would go missing from the table, only to appear later stuck upright in the sugar jar. The kind of things you can explain away as forgetfulness if you're determined enough. But the third night, as I lay in bed listening to the wind push at the shutters, I heard it again, scuffling above the hearth, a faint childish giggle, and a whisper in a voice too high and too small to belong to any of the neighbors. "Is he asleep?" "Not yet," another voice answered. "Listen, his breath is still busy." I held that breath without meaning to, heart thudding. "Now he's listening," the second voice said, delighted. "You'll scare him," a third voice scolded. This one was softer, almost like leaves brushing stone. "He's not the same as before." "He smells the same," said the first. "Smoke and books and winter apples." "Not apples," another voice chimed in. "Coffee. Look at his hands." I lay there, perfectly still, staring at the dark ceiling. My hands, tucked under the blanket, were cold. My pulse echoed in my fingers. "We could braid his hair," one whispered. "He doesn't have enough," another complained. They all fell into a fit of tiny giggles. I sat up slowly. "I can hear you," I said, my voice rough. Then, after a moment, a single, breathless word. "Oh." The giggling stopped. I got out of bed, pulled my wool sweater over my shoulders, and padded into the main room. The fire had burned low, embers glowing like sleepy eyes under the ash. The chimney was just a dark throat above them. The mantel held its usual parade of small things: brass icon lamp, framed black, and white photos, the chipped vase painted with pomegranates. "I don't mind you being here," I said quietly, "but please don't touch my socks again. It's cold." There was a rustle up inside the chimney, then a rain of soot and other things. 2 walnuts, 3 chestnuts, and a button my grandmother must have lost years ago. "Trade," a tiny voice said from somewhere in the flue. "We took socks. We give nuts. Fair." A smile tugged at my mouth before I could stop it. "All right," I said. "Fair." I sat down on the low stool and held my hands out to the fire. The room smelled of smoke and old wood and roasted chestnuts, though I hadn't roasted any yet. "Yaya used to tell me about you," I said. "Yaya," one of the voices echoed, pleased, "the old woman with the strong hands. She always left a piece of sausage for you on Christmas Eve," I said. "She seasoned it well," another voice sighed. "We liked her very much. She was noisy when she was alive. Quiet now." The words slipped under my ribs like a knife made of ice. You've seen her." A pause. She sits in the chair, the smallest voice said. The one by the window. She counts the snowflakes and hums. She shouts when you forget to close the door. I swallowed. She's here. She's here. She's here. They chorused as if stating the obvious. The old armchair by the window stood in its usual place. Cushions slightly sagged, knitted blanket folded over the back, empty. Why can't I see her? I whisper. Your eyes are too loud, one of them said. You look for what you remember, not what is. The fire popped, peppering the hearthstone with little sparks. The tiny voices withdrew deeper into the chimney, murmuring to each other in a language I couldn't quite catch. I sat there a long time, staring at the empty chair. Over the next few days, the house grew, busier. The Kalikantzaroi, if that's truly what they were, never showed themselves directly. But they made their presence known in ways that felt more like curiosity than malice. They untied my bootlaces and knotted them together in elaborate, impossible braids. They rearranged the coffee cups so that the one I always used mysteriously migrated to the other side of the shelf, forcing me to stop and look instead of reaching on autopilot. They stole the lid of the sugar bowl and replaced it with an old playing card. They hid my phone. That last one nearly drove me mad. I spent 2 hours turning the house upside down before I found it tucked neatly into the pocket of my grandmother's winter coat, hanging by the door. On the coat's cuff, someone had tied a small red thread. I hadn't. Very funny, I muttered, though I wasn't sure whether I meant the spirits or my grandmother, wherever she was. Outside, snow began to fall in thin, patient flakes, dusting the fig tree and the old stone wall. Inside, the house felt alive again, not full the way it had been when my grandmother was here, bustling and muttering and constantly rearranging things that didn't need rearranging, but not empty either. On Christmas Eve, I cooked the foods she always made: bean soup, a little pork with garlic and lemon, potatoes roasted until their edges crisped. I poured a small glass of wine for myself and one more for the empty chair by the window. I didn't know the etiquette for feeding spirits, but I cut a slice of sausage and placed it on a cracked saucer on the hearthstone, just in case. For old times, I murmured. The fire burned bright. Shadows danced up the chimney. Somewhere above, tiny voices whispered. Seasoned well, she taught him properly. I set another plate at the table, not because I expected it to be used, but because it felt wrong not to. The house creaked and settled. A log fell in the hearth with a soft crash. The wind pressed at the windows, then let go. As I ate, a sense of company settled around me. The air felt heavier over the empty chair, as if someone were sitting there, elbows on knees, watching me with that particular mix of pride and criticism only grandmothers manage. I raised my glass toward the chair. Chronia pola, I said softly. The glass on the table, beside the chair, moved the smallest fraction of an inch, not far enough to be certain. Just enough to believe. That night, the Kalikantzaroi grew bolder. I woke to the sound of small feet pattering on the ceiling, a chorus of shushing and shesh. He'll wake, and he's already awake, you fool. I stayed very still, eyes closed, breath slow. Where will we go when the water comes? A small voice asked. The priest will bless it. Another said, he'll throw the cross. The water will sting, and we'll go back below. Same as always. I like it here, someone sniffed. He makes good soup. He doesn't shout when we touch his things. He does, but not like the others. I rolled onto my side, the mattress springs complaining. Silence fell for a heartbeat. Then a voice near my ear, so close I could feel the whisper, stir my hair, said, your yaya wants you to sleep. She says, you look tired in the bones. I opened my eyes. The room was dark. The outline of the wardrobe loomed against the wall, familiar and oversized. I am tired, I whispered back, but I don't want to forget her. A pause, then, in a tone of solemn conspiracy. She is not a thing you can forget. She's stuck to you, like soot. Like soot, another agreed. Like sausage smell, a third added. Tiny giggles rippled through the room. I laughed, a soft, helpless sound, and felt something unclench in my chest. Will you be here next year? I asked. If there is smoke, one said. If there is soup, another. If you leave socks by the fire, we will return them full. Full of what? I asked, wary. Nuts, they chorused. Then, after a conspiratorial pause, maybe beans. On the morning of Epiphany, the village priest came to bless the houses. I watched from the doorway as he sprinkled holy water along the lintel, murmuring the ancient words. The Kalikantzaroi had warned me they'd have to leave when the water came. Does it hurt? I'd asked, thinking of them flinching like stray cats. It tickles, one had admitted, but it sends us home. We forget again what we were doing. Keep the fire going, another had said, so we can find our way back when the days are short and your head is too noisy. Now, as the priest's hand drew a dripping cross in the air, I felt a faint shiver run through the house. Not fear, not loss, just movement, energy shifting, as if something that had come loose had found its way back into place. Χρόνια πολλά, the priest said kindly, tapping my forehead lightly with the sprig of basil. May your house be full. I glanced over his shoulder at the empty chair by the window. For a heartbeat, just one, I saw the outline of a woman sitting there, hair pulled back, hands folded in her lap, eyes crinkled at the corners, in a look that was half amusement, half I told you so. Then the priest turned, the basil swept the air again, and she was gone. The house felt quiet, not empty, just resting. That night, as I settled under the blankets, I placed a pair of clean wool socks by the hearth. In the morning, they were full of walnuts. I've gone back to the village every Christmas since. The city has its own lights, its own noise, its own ways of remembering and forgetting. But the little stone house by the fig tree feels like the place where the world becomes thin enough for stories to step through. I keep the old rituals, sweep the hearth, light the fire, set an extra plate at the table. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear tiny feet and hushed giggles above the chimney. And every year, without fail, my socks go missing for at least one night. When I find them again, they're always a little warmer than they should be, and there are always a few nuts tucked inside, a reminder that I am not alone, that mischief and memory walk hand in hand, and that some visitors only come when the nights are longest, and the fire is bright enough to show them the way. Thank you for joining us on this serene journey through the snowy landscapes of a Greek folk tale. We hope this story brought warmth to your heart and sweet dreams to your night. If you enjoyed this magical experience, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your loved ones. Until next time, may your nights be filled with peace and your dreams be filled with wonder. Good night.